Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast. How's everybody doing? It's Friday evening. Maybe you're watching the NCAA March Madness. We are watching right now Iowa playing Clemson. Do you have the quad on your TV so you can watch all four games at the same time? Iowa got up big in this game. Clemson's kind of fought back a little bit. Interesting day in college basketball. Now, I know if you're from the Buckeye State, you are probably upset. Well, maybe you're not that upset, but the Buckeyes lost yesterday. Then there's that Wright State team. Didn't know. Well, right there is a school named Wright State. It's over there in the Dayton area. They lost. Akron lost earlier today. And this afternoon, again, Miami of Ohio. Yeah, that team that went undefeated until the end of the year into the tournament, they ended up losing as well. I was not a big fan of Miami of Ohio, especially on the men's side. I was there covering the MAC tournament last weekend in Cleveland and really enjoyed that, especially for the women's basketball tournament. I thought that was a lot of fun. We'll share a few moments there later on in our show, but their men's team, they had a really nice run. They got to the MAC tournament and lost to, can't think of who they lost to, but in their previous win leading up to the MAC tournament, they beat Ohio down there in Ohio. And the after effect after that game was just, I know those players were excited, but they were yelling profanities and all sorts of just stupid stuff back at the Ohio fan base, the student section. I'm figuring it was just a really bad look. And, when you see players doing that, and I don't know what the repercussions were after the game or if the coach, what they did, if they did anything, but there are well-coached teams and there are not well-coached teams. And that's an example of one that I just didn't have a lot of respect for after seeing how they balked and yelled and screamed back at the Ohio fan base there. When you're playing college sports, you're playing pros, you've got to understand your audience. You've got to understand where you're at. And for those kids to lose their crap suggests that who's ever the leader of that group is not a very good leader, and he loses his crap. There's been several moments this season where the Miami of Ohio men's coach really lost his crap. Now I was there last week at the MAC tournament following the women's tournament, and the Miami of Ohio women won the tournament, and they actually have a game tomorrow afternoon. I think they play at 5:00. They play West Virginia. Good luck to them. Now, I have never met the Miami of Ohio coach. I have met the Miami of Ohio women's coach. I had a chance to interview him a couple times last weekend, and by all accounts, really well-respected coach. Glenn Box, I believe is his name. And, seeing that contrast and how he led his women's basketball program compared to the Miami of Ohio coach, who's really just a hothead. They got kind of what they had coming to them in this loss in the tournament. So I wasn't that upset to see them lose. Now, I'm down here in the Columbus area, and I know there's a lot of Buckeye fans out there. And the Buckeyes had a good season. They had a good, especially second half of the season. Bruce Thornton, their senior leader, did lots of things. The last play of the game, in yesterday's Buckeye game, they had 4.5 seconds, and they got the ball back to Bruce Thornton, who only was able to get off really a half-court shot. He looked like he was running through mud. You contrast that with a game like today, earlier, where you had Santa Clara playing Kentucky, and I don't know if anybody caught this or have seen the highlights since. We saw it earlier when I was watching it live. It's just crazy sequence at the end of the game. 10 seconds. Kentucky hits a layup to tie the game. Santa Clara rushes back to the other side of the floor. Kid hits a 3-pointer, 2.5 seconds to go. No timeout called. Now, they say Santa Clara's coach was calling timeout. I believe he was trying to call a timeout, but they didn't. The refs ignored it or didn't see it. But Kentucky was able to get a better shot than our Buckeye, Bruce Thornton, did in 2 seconds less. They had 2.5 seconds. Buckeye had 4.5 seconds, and he got off an amazing shot. He banked it in. I'm sure he called that bank, but I'm not a big Kentucky Wildcat fan. Do like their campus. Was there at their college years ago. Nice campus, but outside of that, I really don't care much for Kentucky basketball. So they ended up then winning in overtime against Santa Clara. So lots of games going on right now. I was trying to pull up my bracket to show this. Thanks again for watching us live here on YouTube, the X, and Facebook. And you can listen to us later on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tune in and listen. We're going to have a guest coming up here, hopefully next week. We've been trying to get this one guest on our show, but we haven't been able to work out a time yet. So I'm hoping that still comes through. I have been speaking to a couple other guests and have some new folks coming on, hopefully next week. Excited about that. So we'll share that next week. But I had my bracket. I was trying to share it on our screen here. I'm not technologically savvy yet. I'm just old. But I did have, let me see here. Hopefully you can still see me. I was going to mention, just looking at my bracket here, I'm on the ESPN with a bunch of my colleagues, the Fantasy League Football Group. Shout out to the folks at Licking Heights. So looking at our brackets here, I've lost the Buckeye game, and I don't know what your bracket looks like, but I have Arizona winning the whole thing. So there you go on that end. Now I have Gonzaga did beat Kennesaw, okay, and then Texas did beat BYU. I had BYU winning that game. High Point was the big upset. A lot of people did not have that. High Point beat Wisconsin. An earlier game today, Utah State. I'm telling you, Utah State for a 9 seed, they looked pretty strong. They beat Villanova 86-76. Arizona State clobbered Long Island 92-58. That's who I have winning the whole damn thing. Right now, Purdue is beating this new college called Queens 63-38. That team up north, those jerks, they beat Howard earlier today. St. Louis last night, fantastic. You talk about a mid-major program that's always been pretty good. The Billikens, St. Louis beat Georgia 102-77. Texas Tech did run away from Akron in the second half of that game. Alabama, who always has issues with criminals, they ended up beating Hofstra again. Alabama, their coach, Nate Oates, he just never liked him when he was at Buffalo. He was there when my daughter was playing college ball for Buffalo women's basketball team. Actually, Bobby Hurley was there, and then Nate Oates was his assistant. Nate Oates stayed on. Nate Oates has interesting background. Has done some fishy things over the years, and his team still wins in Alabama, but don't have a lot of respect for the guy. One of his best players got in trouble with the law for doing some things he shouldn't have been doing earlier in the week. So it's kind of par for the course if you're an Alabama basketball player. Virginia beat Wright State. We talked about that earlier. In Miami of Ohio lost by 22 to the Tennessee Volunteers. Let's see here. Iowa State won, and then so I'm doing pretty good on my bracket. I haven't lost too many. A shout out to Steve Gill, our colleague with the Dog Pound South show. He's a graduate of Vanderbilt, so I know that they won yesterday. Okay, so those are some of the things going on right now in the March Madness. More games tomorrow. Right now, we got 27 seconds in this Iowa game. They've got a 6-point lead against Clemson. Clemson's fought back. They were down 15, 17 points. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay. Let's pause for a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and talk about the Brownies. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks for coming back to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. All right, the Browns, we've talked about this. I had our show last night with the Fanatical Elves show itself with Steve Gill and our colleague Sam Britton. We talked quite a bit about the Browns free agents moves. They have done some really good things, and we need to give the Browns some props for what they've done in free agency. Nothing spectacular, but they've gotten some really good folks that are going to be primarily playing offensive line. Zion Johnson. We've got a kid on the defensive side of the ball, Jenkins. So we've got some good talent that they've brought in, some older talent a little bit. They're on their second contracts. And again, nothing spectacular, but they did draft or they brought in another guy yesterday, and I want to get his name right. We talked a little bit about him yesterday on our show in the evening. Let me see here. Kid from Buffalo. He played linebacker, defensive end, primarily. What was his name? I don't want to screw this up. AJ Epinesa. Just a good, solid player. The Browns got rid of the Cameron Thomas, the guy that jumped off sides and lost one of our games early in the year. And people were talking about, this Epinesa replacing him and like a, kind of an equal trade. And I'm like, no way. I mean, this Epinesa, he's $5 million they signed him. It's a good gig. I mean, this kid, he was good. He's got 25 sacks, folks, in his career. That Thomas kid had like 2. I mean, I know sacks isn't just everything, but this kid creates a lot of havoc. And I remember watching him with the Buffalo Bills. So I think it's a good addition. The other pickup, well, that was the bigger one. Then there was a couple other side ones with special teams, and Steve Gill talked about this last night on the show again about how the Browns are really trying to build up on the special teams, considering we were so atrocious. I mean, we consider that we lost the Cincinnati Bengals game last year and the Jets game primarily because of our special teams. I mean, just in those 2 losses alone, made it. I mean, those are 2 winnable games. We should have won both those games, and because of our lack of a special teams group, we ended up being what we were. 5 wins on the season. We could have easily probably had at least 7, 8, 9 wins on that season. Speaking of wins or lack of wins, we're hoping, Browns fans, if you read up on your Browns material, there's all sorts of predictions out there these days. I wrote an article this week for Dog Pound Daily about one prediction. A guy at ESPN wrote about how he thinks that the Pittsburgh Squealers are about ready to have their first losing season in 22 years. With Mike Tomlin leaving and Mike McCarthy coming in, he believes that it's the Steelers are just kind of they're teetering on the edge of being really bad, and they don't have a quarterback. They have an old, aging 42, 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers who still hasn't decided what he's going to do. So there's a good chance that the Squealers don't have a winning season this year. We'll keep our eyes out, keep our fingers crossed, and hope for the best. We can always hope that our divisional rivals, Pittsburgh and the Baltimore Ratbirds and the Bungles, all keep losing this year. We did mention the other day, I thought we were just having a little fun with this, but what if Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow is just sad, right? I mean, you guys watched Joe Burrow. We talked about this again last night, and it's just hilarious to me. Not hilarious. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, and not that I feel that bad. I mean, he plays for the Bungles, but he just needs a change of scenery. Now, I don't know if Cleveland would be it, but we were speculating like, my God, what if Joe Burrow came to Cleveland? What if somehow the Browns worked out a big deal to bring in Joe Burrow? I mean, that would help the offense immensely. Probably not going to happen, but we can always have a pipe dream. Um, Speaking of quarterbacks, there's been a lot of conversation because people are running out of material and things to click on. Is this whole conversation about Shador Sanders, and then we're throwing in Deshaun Watson. Some people in the national media are trying to spin it to make it sound like it's Deshaun Watson's job. You paid him all this money. We don't believe here on the Fanatical Elves Network that Deshaun Watson is going to be quarterbacking the Cleveland Browns, even though people are speculating and talking about it and it looks this way or that way. We just don't think that that's going to happen. But Shador Sanders, we got to give this kid some time. He won 3 games last year. He was 3 wins and 4 losses. I know Steve Gill, my colleague, we were talking about this, that he watched film and he thinks that Shador's footwork was lousy. But uh, again, he went back, watched the film. That's great. But in the time, in the place, in the moment when we were watching Shador, yes, he was awkward in many spots, but he was also spectacular in other spots too. And quite honestly, I don't remember a lot of people that were watching those games, analysts that were covering those games, uh, harping on the poor footwork of Shador Sanders. In hindsight, you go back and you look at, okay, maybe things weren't there, but I was watching the games live like all of you. And no, he wasn't great, but he certainly wasn't the worst quarterback that I've seen who comes in as a rookie halfway through the season. He did some really good things, and the Browns went 3-4 in his time. I know what the stats say, and I know some of you just love to hate on Shador. You can keep hating on him. That's fine. But I think that just gives Shador more, you know, he's saving those receipts. He knows what's being talked about. I'm sure, he's aware. He's a young kid. He hears that stuff. He's probably trying to lock it out, not make it a big part of his what his thought process is. He's got to get ready for next season. I talked about this last week too with some of the stupid beat writers out there up in Cleveland. Jason Lloyd just is a complete moron, talking bad about Shador and talking about him not watching tape and all this stuff. I mean, it's complete bogus bullcrap. But that's what happens when you're in the business too long and you don't know what you're talking about. So I hope that Shador proves everybody wrong. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I certainly think that Shador deserves another opportunity this upcoming year. I know some of you don't think that he's worthy of being the number one guy. I just totally am the opposite of that. I think that this kid is only going to get better. I think his ceiling is extremely high. I don't think he's like a Dylan Gabriel that's scared to death when he's out there. I think Shador is learning how to play the position at the NFL level, and that's all going to be good and better for the Cleveland Browns. So let's see what happens. All right. We were still talking a little bit about the draft. Now, the Browns have had a lot of players. I was looking at this earlier today. They've had a plethora of players come in this week, especially wide receivers for their visits. I think each team gets like 30 visits. And so the Browns have brought in that Mike Lemon, the USC wide receiver, Denzel Boston. They brought in Omar Cooper, the kid from Indiana. So there's a lot of speculation. What are the Browns going to do in the upcoming draft? They have the picks 6 and 24. We talked again about this last night in our show. I for one, and I've said this for a while, going back a bit. It's number 6. I'm taking Caleb Downs. I love this kid from Ohio State. If you have Caleb Downs there and Carnell Tate, I am taking Caleb Downs. Now I know we need a wide receiver, but I just mentioned there are several here. If Caleb Downs is there, Caleb Downs is the best player in this NFL draft. Some of you are trying to get scared away because he's a safety and he plays defense, and some of you just don't want to believe that this kid is going to be dynamite in the league. And I know the Browns have a better defense than offense. But if you have a Caleb Downs right there, sitting there for you to take at number 6, you gotta take him. I'm gonna just lose my marbles on draft night if Caleb Downs and Carnell Tate are both there. Now listen, I won't lose my marbles as much if both are there and the Browns take Carnell Tate. Okay, I will be bothered, but I can handle that. But if Caleb Downs is there, Carnell Tate's not. For I don't think he. I think Carnell Tate will be there a lot longer than Caleb Downs. So we'll see. The Browns have picked up some pieces on the offensive line already in free agency. I know that there's a few kids out there. There's Morgan Freeling or whatever guy who's a project from Georgia. I get it. I know he's kind of the hot name right now, but Monroe Freeling, I think is his name. We'll see. We'll talk more about some of these specifics, players, scouting them as we get closer to the draft. It starts April 23rd in Pittsburgh. By the way, Pittsburgh City Schools over there in Pennsylvania has decided to have remote learning, like back in the pandemic days, because of the draft. I didn't see Cleveland doing that when the draft was here a few years ago. Pittsburgh just is soft when it comes to doing that sort of thing, right? I don't know about that. Anywho, Pittsburgh's a great town. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Pittsburgh is a great town. I hate their football team. You should hate their football team if you're a Browns fan. But the city itself and the town and what it's made of and the colleges, the universities, the food business there, Primardi Brothers. I mean, it's good stuff. If you like some French fries on your sandwich, go to Pittsburgh. Okay. So we'll see. We'll talk more about drafts. Let's see. I had a comment here. I think Jeffrey, if you're watching, thank you. Appreciate you doing that. If you're watching on YouTube, it looked like. See if you're here there. We're talking about okay. He's talking about basketball, which I was going to bring up here shortly. Jeffrey, if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, Jeffrey says the Cavs need more shooters. We were really relying on Max Strus and Jalen Tyson to be the shooters, and I don't think that's the best idea. Well, Jeffrey, and I know you probably will disagree with me here, but and maybe if you listened to my show before, I'm a big fan of Dean Wade. Now, I know a lot of you don't like Dean Wade just because, and some of you just don't understand basketball, and I know that Dean Wade makes mistakes. I know some of you are pissed off that he doesn't shoot the ball more or he misses some shots, but Dean Wade is one of those glue guys. And if you listen to any coach that has ever coached him, and even the ones now, Kenny Atkinson, he talks about someone like Dean Wade. And I know he's not knocking down outside shots like you're talking about, like you're talking here about Max Strus and Jalen Tyson, but Dean Wade is a very important part to this Cavs team. Now, I know they talked about this rotation going into the playoffs, getting down to 10 players. I would imagine, that Dean's got to be part of that mix. He's such a great, great defender. Some of you guys are just you have no business talking about basketball when you don't respect some of these players at the professional level and what they do, especially on the defensive end. If you do not have a Dean Wade on the Cavs team, I'm telling you right now, when he's not on the floor, especially defensively, that Cavs team is not as good as they could be when he's on the floor. It's a strong opinion. I believe it. I've watched this kid play for the Cavs. I've watched this kid play when he was at K-State. I watched this kid play in high school. Kid knows basketball. So those of you who don't like a Dean Wade, you can go listen to somebody else because you're not going to hear me criticize one of the better players in the Cavs. Now, you've got players in the Cavs that have been hurting still. Jarrett Allen. But again, I talked about this last week too. I mean, we've still got so many weeks to go. I know the Cavs won yesterday. They beat the Bulls. They had a big lead, kind of lost it, but held on and won. That's going to happen. It's a long season. It's 82 games. Some of you who are just criticizing, oh, this Cavs team's not very good. It's not going to get very far. You don't know that. We've had other teams before here this year that you thought were going to run the table, and they got knocked out early. Let things just play out. You guys were all panicking 2 or 3 months ago saying, oh my God, we're not even going to make the playoffs. I think we're what, third or fourth seed right now. We're fine. And if you don't like it, you stop rooting for the Cavs. Get behind your team, support your team. Stop being negative all the time about a team that's doing some really, really good things. We have got some outstanding professional teams here in Cleveland. Yeah, I know the Cavs struggle. I know they've had their share of moments and bad times, especially since we traded for Deshaun Watson and spent $200 million on a guaranteed contract. But we have good sports here in Cleveland. You know that we are the center of the sports universe. I say it all the time, and people know it. They see it. For God's sakes, man, we had a meteor. We had a meteor try to crash into Cleveland earlier in the week. How many towns does that happen to in the United States? Not many. Not many. I mean, in the movies, it's New York City, but in real life, it's Cleveland. We are the center of the universe. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy March Madness. Will be more games tomorrow, more games on Sunday. We'll see what the Browns do next with some free agency. Maybe they have a trade up their sleeve as we get closer to the actual draft. And maybe on draft day, the Browns, we were speculating about that. Maybe the Browns have some sort of trade in mind come draft day, and that we'll find out more, because a lot of times these GMs like Andrew Berry and other teams are talking and communicating, and they already have deals kind of in play depending on how the draft plays out. So we'll be anxious to see this. I think last year, Browns fans kind of got, because of how we moved down in the draft, we got Mason Graham. We traded out of that, what we were pick number 3. I think it's kind of set us up for this sort of feeling like, oh, well, the Browns are going to trade up or trade down. They're not going to stay at 6. I hope for the sake of things that Andrew Berry stays at 6 and 24 for right now. They have a bunch of other picks later in the second and third round. I think we were talking yesterday. They have like pick 39, some other things coming close to that in the draft order. So we'll see. Lots of things to consider. But thanks again for tuning in here for the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network. And again, a shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Check out our X page where you can click on the link, buy some coffee, and you sending 15% back here to the Fanatical Elves Network. Everybody take care. Go Browns. And remember too, that's right, keep smiling. See ya.